Oh, how I've missed this theme tune.
There's your intro.
Hello and welcome to eCommerce Matters, brought to you by BlackCurve. We help e-commerce businesses make pricing decisions. Today's title is Why Price Automation Should Be Your New Year's Resolution. Is it yours, Rob? It already was. It was last year and the year before and the year before that for you. It certainly was for me. I'm joined as ever by Product Director Dr. Rob Horton, and I should probably now refer to him as a digital nomad because he is stuck in the countryside. Another year, another lockdown that we fight on. I'm Philip Huthwaite, the founder of BlackCurve, and without further ado, should we get pricing, Rob?
Yeah. Oh, I'm taking that. Such good branding. I didn't end up the wrong side of tier 4. I am a digital nomad and it was completely intentional.
There we go.
Hence why I don't no longer have a monitor, microphone, keyboard.
All the work essentials, but it's all right. We'll let you off. I'm not going to put you on the naughty list quite yet. It's only January, so we'll let you off. We'll let you off. So, have you brought as for those new listeners? It's a new season of eCommerce Matters, and for those new listeners, we generally like to start our podcast with a prop to articulate today's title. And today's title is just a reminder: why price automation should be your New Year's resolution. So, Rob, start the year with a bang. What have you got? He's rustling around. What is that? Describe it. I'm really confused. It's a grey tin. What is it?
It is. It's a grey tin. It's probably terrible for your audio.
It's metallic.
It's a fish smoker.
Goodness me. Right, okay. Explain. I'm still lost.
There you go. Let's start big. And really, it's more... I went more on New Year's resolution than actually the theme of the program, because
Gotcha.
Lockdown, I've done a lot through lockdown. I've done two things actually. I've done a lot of professional development, which is one thing I want to carry on with the new year, but like the other is I've done loads of cooking. And so I got given we've got a little kind of meat smoker with a pellet smoker, but this is a paraffin fish smoker that I got given for Christmas. So this is my New Year, more cooking, basically. That's my prop.
I like it. You've gone to the part of the title which I wasn't expecting you to. So if we can continue that theme throughout the year and challenge me, I think that's a good way to start. So I was scratching my head for a minute, but glad you've clarified
really
it.
Just doing it to mess with you.
Oh, goodness me, I've missed this. Happy New Year, Rob. Right, so I have stuck to theme, and I've got a miniature power drill, and it's not a proper power drill; it's a kid's toy power drill, because I as also frequent listeners know, I steal from my son's toy collection. So he's getting pretty good, these toy collections. Basically, what you don't know is I'm buying the toy the week before,
He's doing so well out of this podcast because blimey, I need a prop.
Buy something.
Prime. Go.
Other retailers are available.
No, they're not.
Not at the moment. Right. So automation, and why would you use a hand drill to put a hole in the wall? Why do you use a hand drill to do any kind of hole in any direction? You automate it, don't you? You get a power drill. You do that. Yeah, Rob's punching in the air. Reaching. Okay, it is a bit tenuous, but what I'm trying to say.
My segue.
For the listeners, you're doing a pretend segue. But let's stay. So I thought, if you've got thousands and thousands of products, why are you managing them by hand? Why are you managing them in Excel? You've got to make sure you have a price management tool or equivalent to do it. So that's my prop for today.
Yeah. That's a lot more relevant than my problem.
Agreed. Okay.
I prefer mine though.
Obviously, your
That's
end
my
product.
Christmas
I can
presents.
just hang up pictures with mine because let's face it, I can't do any other DIY. Whereas you can actually create some
Well, I don't
culinary
have a house,
excellence.
Philip, so no pictures to hang up.
And my New Year's resolution, actually, also to stay on theme, is to have better internet, and I have achieved that. I have achieved it. I have achieved it today by the nature of a 30-meter Ethernet cable, Cat 7. I am fully now in the 21st century, 2021.
It's worth pointing out for the listeners that it's either like a really good thing or a really bad thing to have a CEO with dodgy internet, because it's got a real habit of kind of cutting out at really important times. So it depends whether you like understanding what's going on or filling in the gaps yourself, basically. Depends.
Well, it's nice to know that you occasionally listen to what I say then, or
I always listen. It's just hard to hear you with you.
Oh, right. So before let's stay on track because we're a few minutes in and we should probably talk about some pricing related topics. So we're talking about, just as a reminder, third time's a charm, why price automation should be your New Year's resolution. So I thought we'd start by simply looking at, what does price automation mean to you, Rob? What is price automation?
Yeah, good question. For me, price automation is just programmatically doing it. So taking the human out of the loop as much as you can. So the traditional, quote unquote, modern way, I mean, the old way would be to have a piece of paper and then go around the store and change it. And then the modern equivalent of that is to have an Excel spreadsheet and then to manually upload the Excel spreadsheet. And then when you want to change a price, you go to the Excel spreadsheet, you change the price and re-upload it, or change it in the database by hand. What I think of when we think of it, automation at BlackCurve is kind of just getting rid of that whole process. So you do the whole thing programmatically. So all the kind of business logic that you do to update that Excel spreadsheet, which normally is either a competitor price movement or a cost price change, and maybe like seasonal demand, or you do that with either pricing rules or AI or whatever, but a computer now does that for you rather than you doing it. So you can kind of sit back, hands off. That's really what it means to me.
So on the setting side, so it's making a decision automatically via a programming script all the way to a system. Well, I suppose fundamentally, if a system's doing it, that is also a programming script. But it's automating that setting, and that setting can happen overnight. Hooray! When we're all sleeping, it just does it itself, or at repeatable points during the day.
Well, and I think that's a really good point, and something we should hit immediately. Price automation does not mean like instantaneous price changes. It just means whatever frequency you want. If you want to change it every 3 months, change it every 3 months. If you want to change it every 6 months, every 6 months. It doesn't mean daily or intraday. I think a lot of people early on doing like kind of thinking about pricing automation stuff, think about travel and tourism and how buying flights and how quickly those prices change, and a natural reaction, often the correct reaction, is, well, that doesn't work for my market at all. Why would I don't need to do that. Where the other side of that is that you could just do it every 3 months. Now it's got to be worth automating. I mean, this is a key part of the value prop for automation, is you either have to have so much stuff or want to do it really fast. I mean, that or both. That's the reality. But if you don't fall into one of those categories, investing in something to do that is unlikely to be worth it. I think that's worth saying up front, right, Philip?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I think if you've got one or two products, or you're a very niche retailer that's selling, 10 products, or even actually I'd say 100 products might start to justify it. But you've got to have a certain amount of products to justify the need for a system over engineering comes to mind if you don't have enough products. You're bringing what's the word? You're bringing a knife to a gun to a knife fight, or whatever the equivalent. Sledgehammer to
nuts. Yeah,
yes.
is the usual one. The other thing that is worth saying is that, like, especially the kind of sort of software we sell, it's a big data problem. So if accuracy is really important to you, kind of, if you need to get to most people we deal with don't do sub pence, but if you want to deal with, like, it needs to be to the penny, you will need either a very sophisticated piece of technology or to do it by hand and work it out. I mean, there isn't really, the middle ground will fall over for you. Now that is like 0.0001% of the market or something. I haven't actually found anyone in e-commerce. There probably are people in e-commerce, I just haven't come into contact with it, who care about that. But, like, I would think about kind of trading in the city, where obviously you're selling a lot of stuff, very high volume, and they call them bips, basis points. So it's like percentage of a percent is kind of, you're paid in that level, like the money you make is in that, and so that's the level of accuracy you care about, and therefore you need very sophisticated algorithms to kind of be able to kind of do that. And a lot of and I'll put us in this bucket, is that's not a high priority for a software provider like us, because most people care about pennies, not percentage of pennies, I guess is the way to phrase it.
And also, to come back to your frequency point as well, I'd agree that a lot of people, when they think of price automation, real time comes to mind, and also real time pricing decisions come to mind. And also, even if you use the term dynamic pricing, which is often used in conjunction or as another word for price automation, again, there's this kind of unthought process that surely that means real time. But without kind of going too much into a previous podcast, we do find that actually a lot of businesses can not get away, but the optimum time frame between price decisions, some of them have to be daily, but actually a week can get you a hell of a lot way to success.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that, and I'm going to probably pick the first fight of 2021, but why not? In that I find it, and I think we at BlackCurve in general try and think problem first, and try and use kind of, stay away from terms like dynamic pricing or price optimization, because even though we're doing that, it's not actually the problem we're solving for people. So that the problem we're really solving at the root is kind of making people market efficient to maximize their profitability in the marketplace, right? And there are a whole number of ways that pricing can do that and interact with your e-com ecosystem. And like you say, the frequency part of it is only one thing, and it might actually be that you have 10,000 SKUs, as we've said previously, and actually just doing that on a monthly is having a huge impact, because you were never getting around to looking at that long tail. And that actually in e-commerce is often the key benefit, certainly of the reprices and just a lower level or price automation. So yeah, I don't find, I think certainly with more sophisticated clients, actually, like kind of price optimization, dynamic pricing, price elasticity is a very valid conversation, and one we can go into in great detail. But for people who are just looking like for a solution to automate a process within their business that's taking up someone's time, that kind of language can often be damaging rather than positive, I think. So I would say to someone, if you're in a business and you're looking to get some kind of thing and you're looking to sell internally as well, there's a little tip from Rob, who's spent 2.5 years trying to do this, is think about the problem you're trying to solve and frame it that way. Don't go in with, this is fancy AI technology that dynamically prices and all the rest of it, because you just won't get the same buy-in that you will if you go problem first.
Absolutely. And also our current description of price automation is actually focused heavily on the price setting side. So, coming up with set of rules, for want of a better word, to get to your ultimate pricing decision. For me also, we can't forget the automation of the price collection side of things. So what I mean by that is going out to the market, collecting your competitor products that your competitors are selling, and also the associated prices that they're selling, and also matching them to your products, so that you can then either just use that as a market awareness kind of exercise to identify where you've got opportunities to purchase products that they don't have, or take it all the way to the other extreme where you're actually using it to automate the decisions on the other side of the scale of the automation.
That is a super valid point, actually, because it's really the automation of data ingestion and egestion, right? If I've got those words right. But the and what you said there is key, and it's not just kind of competitor prices, but it's, are you in an industry with varying cost prices? Would they, if you're drop shipping or a supplier, how frequently do your cost price change? Are they changing weekly or daily? Or some industries we've spoken to change intraday, and therefore a key part of the automation process is nothing complex. It's just passing that cost price on and ensuring that you're maintaining the margin level you want. So you're a lot of people, I think we spoke about this before, are targeted at if they're managing pricing by the board at a margin level or an average margin they have to maintain, and therefore maintaining that at scale when the cost prices are varying rapidly is really important. And it's really all that ops around pricing for me, actually, if I and automating as much of that as possible.
So, I mean, we've touched upon it slightly, but what kind of businesses, what kind of retail businesses, e-commerce businesses would benefit from price automation? Who are we talking about here?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it depends what kind of age of the business, who's running it. Because if we so the salesy answer we've already touched on, which is large number of SKUs, frequent price changes, high volumes of transactions, anything that puts you in lots of things. Too many things are happening for me to keep on top of as a human, whether for data gathering or price gathering or price setting, right? So if your cost prices are changing a lot, your marketplace is changing a lot, and you need to pass that on in a price change out the other end, because the frequency at which you price change is symptomatic, actually, like you say, of the data stuff. I'd also say resource light or very lean businesses. So BlackCurve is very much in the lean startup kind of model. I think the politically correct term is capital efficient, is it not? But
correct, brainwash complete.
yeah. But it makes sense, right? We try and maximize what we can do with the minimum amount of people, and the key part of that is automating process. So if we were running a shop, if it was an automated process, we would probably automate it and not worry about it too much, because again, we've spoken about before, currently in the marketplace, pricing is not the key driver. Product selection, stock accessibility, all that stuff. So really, if you're resource light, or you want to free up someone who's spending a day or so a week, or a week a month, or whose whole job, and they can be repurposed to do something else, probably more interesting than updating an Excel spreadsheet. That's another key argument in my case for price automation. I mean, I'm a developer, programmer by background, so I would just automate it because I can automate it. And I'm also a really big proponent, it's a bit more technical, of kind of so-called no-code solutions. So, and I think the whole e-com structure is really going that way. So any kind of module I can just pull in and that will do something for me, and then I don't have to think about. Happy bloody days. Do you know what I mean? Sure, I'll monitor it, sure, I'll check it, and I'll tune it, and all the rest of it. But if I don't have to go in and write the pricing rules myself, even better.
And I mean, we've gone into a bit of why you should do it, and I think it's critical in this. It wouldn't be the first podcast if we don't mention it's no longer an elephant in the room, but the COVID situation, but that we're in, right? It's just our lives. So it's elephants everywhere. Here, there, everywhere. Yeah. Big elephants, bigger elephants.
I'm in a padded cell.
But certainly, you know, a lot of the retailers that are customers of ours, you know, some have done stonkingly well. Some have done okay. Some have done actually what they expected. You know, there's been winners and losers, right? And but the common theme is that, you know, almost overnight, when each lockdown's announced, or it's just been absolutely crazy, and therefore it's been all hands to the pump. So therefore, that's why this automation, you know, not only from your pricing point of view, but automation of everything, so that you can become, you know, quote unquote market efficient, is uber critical at any point, but even more critical in times of, you know, economic distress is the wrong word if you're doing well, but you know, times such as this that we're living in.
I wouldn't say, yeah, I'd rephrase that. I'd say being market efficient is incredibly important in times of surging demand, because that's what, if no one's buying anything, price it however you bloody want. It doesn't matter. No one's buying anything. But if people are buying, then it really matters, right? Then, because like pricing, there's Google studies on this because they do all that advertising stuff, but pricing is one of the key things for conversion, right? Obviously, are they coming to your site? They're going to somewhere else? Are they buying? Is the price right? It doesn't have to be like the cheapest, but it has to be within like market range, right? Is it a fair price? And then the rest of it plays in. That's the important bit in surging, because if you're mispriced and people are looking to buy, they're just not going to buy from you, because unless you're the only person with the stock. But so I think that's the key. It's not about, I mean, obviously times of distress do cause increases and like rapid changes in demand, and that's kind of what you're seeing. But really, pricing doesn't really care about the downward turn, because it can't do anything about it, right? If no one wants to buy, because there isn't a need for the product, that you'll get some sales by tanking the price and making it cheaper, but it's unlikely that product is price driven, right? The conversion is price driven. And likewise, when there's a surge in demand for an exterior reason, it's unlikely that's price driven, but you will stop conversion by being mispriced. So you get punished much harder for having it up on the way up than the way down, which is kind of bad, really. Not bad, but well, it's bad for you.
Well, it's max. You know, you want to maximize returns, I suppose. You know, you don't want to kick yourself saying shoulda, woulda, coulda. You know, that you want to maximize it.
The real key point actually to hammer on that, and we mentioned it earlier, is the long tail thing. So what we see from our analysis in times of stress, high demand, the products people buy, that distribution widens out because stock sells out, right? So people have to find alternative products or substitute products or whatever. And often your core products are priced well if you've been doing things manually, and your extraneous ones aren't. And those are the ones that you'll really get hammered on, because you won't pick up any of the associated conversion with that. So you'll probably sell out your main stock at the same rate as everyone else in the market, and then you'll inadvertently be playing a game of chicken, probably in terms of like holding your price too high against everyone else, waiting for that to kind of sell through, and which is maybe a valid strategy, but probably isn't your intended one.
And I mean, just to hammer the point home on from a time-saving point of view, you know, it's common for e-commerce companies that we work with that just on the collection, when they're doing it manually themselves, they're all logging in on a daily basis before they work with us and physically eyeballing and checking products. There's only so much you can do of that, and actually, you as soon as you've looked at it, you know, it's almost that data's kind of out of date. And how much can you keep it up? I mean, that's a relentless task. You're not going to look at all of your products every day. You're only going to look at a small few. If you can automate that, great. You save yourself half an hour every day. If you, from the price setting point of view, and also you get more data because you get coverage across the whole lot. Also, from a price setting point of view, it's common for it to be someone's full-time job, 5 days a week, to be managing an Excel spreadsheet and making decisions on that. Again, if they can focus more on the strategic side of things, or alternatively, you can let pricing do its thing, let an automated machine do its thing, and you can be pulled into all hands to the pump in other areas. You know, that's a huge amount of money that you can invest in other parts of your business. It's not these are not material savings. Sorry, minor savings. They're really big.
you've hit on a really key point there with the automation piece, because there's often the challenge with automation that it's job destruction, right? That you're taking someone's career away. With price automation, you're generally not in the what we provide a solution. We are not strategists or consultants, and I would say this is true for anyone providing. There are consultancies that do price automation, and they will work with you to build strategies and the rest of it. But the kind of in the area we play in, what we provide is a toolbox for you to build out a strategy to test and learn against, and then repeat and iterate and see how that works. And then as a pricing manager, you get to do the strategic side of your job without doing the kind of manual stitching 5 Excel spreadsheets together, making sure that things have percolated through one to the other, that one box hasn't corrupted and broken further down the line. Is getting rid of that kind of thing, which is the core benefit of automation, I think. And then also automating the reporting and analysis and back end as well. So you can, because I don't think Philip or I is saying you don't need to look at it, because that's not true at all. It just changes the way you look at and what you look at. So traditionally, big data, if you look at the you look at the tails. So you look at top and tail it. What are the big price changes? What are the smaller price changes being driven in the market? Some will be rational, some might be data errors, often are data errors. And you'd have to do that anyway, because it's the same. Often it's the same data that you're pulling in, right? And so really, what you cut out is the kind of having to do the bulk price movements of the kind of 90% of your inventory that kind of sits in the middle and just moves up a little bit and down as the market fluctuates, or you track your competition, and just exception handle the weird things that come out the side. And suddenly that's going down from gone down to like an hour a day rather than a day a week, if that makes sense, or something that you can do with a cup of coffee in the morning. And so that's the key bit, is that it lets you understand more and be strategic and think and develop, and not just get bogged down with managing data in an Excel spreadsheet. Really, like.
I think one of my I won't say proudest, but one of my biggest moments that always puts a smile on my face is actually one of the earlier case studies that I did in pricing space, and actually it was before BlackCurve, and this was actually why I got really excited about pricing, and eventually sort of got into launching my own business in the pricing space. Was we implemented a price automation tool. Okay, and when we started, there was 2 people in the pricing team. Okay, and I've just caught up with the team now, and there's 16 people in the pricing team. Right, because the power of pricing, they've invested in automation. They've seen what a great benefit it can have, because it tweaks, it optimizes, it allows them to test, nudge, and deliver. That as a result, it has enabled that team to grow, and they've seen the power of pricing and invested even more into the pricing operation. So I'll echo that sentiment in terms of it actually has, weirdly, as much as it saves you time, it also adds to your ability to test and fine tune other things. So as a result, you invest more in it, and it actually creates job creation, which is fantastic. Which is fantastic to see. So one thing we haven't mentioned in terms of why you should do it is actually the type of business, and I don't mean as in the type of businesses because that are selling DIY equipment or equivalent. There's the cultural fit that we haven't spoken about. So if you were a retailer that loves data, that's prepared, that almost likes to price test, that likes to tweak, that likes to nudge, that likes to know that they're in control of the pricing operation and get comfort from that price automation is for you. Okay, if you're not of that culture of test and learn, and actually one of the things is if you get excitement out of making mistakes that you can learn from, again, price automation is for you. If that's not you, actually, I sometimes would sort of discourage you from going down that journey, because you've got to be bought into we're going to make mistakes. We're going to find data that's crap. Therefore, we're going to find that sometime, and we'll come upon some of the cons of in a moment, but you're going to find some of your data's crap. You're going to automate on crap data. You're going to be selling below margins. You're going to find some of your cost prices aren't correct. You're going to be selling. You're going to find that actually what you thought was a competitor match wasn't a competitor match. You're making a price decision off someone that is all that's going to happen.
Yep.
Okay, I will own it from the gate. Okay,
again.
and again and again, and I will own it, and I always go into engagements by telling people this will happen. If you've got tens of thousands of products, if you've even got thousands of products, we're all hackery businesses. We're all dealing with a mixture of Excel spreadsheets, multiple systems. There's going to be stuff in there. So you've got to have that culture that you're going to use price automation and the project as an opportunity to learn, test. You're going to be able to make mistakes, but you're going to come out of that as a springboard and grow.
Yeah, I'd say that it needs to be within the whole business. So the companies we see that we've spoken to or worked with that are very successful in pricing, the culture comes from the top. Like the best people we work with, the original pricing software they use was written by the CEO. Like it's so pricing in that company is kind of all the way down, right? And then because the other side of it is that you might get pricing, but your company might not, and then you need to take a very different approach, because sticking an automated tool in, which will go wrong, especially as it takes time to bed down and you get used to it, could just blow that argument out the water if you don't do it in the right way. And we address this by breaking the product up and having different offerings, and that's everything from just getting your data for you automatically, and then building in levels of sophistication in effect of what you can do with that data, other data sources that you can include, analytics, rules, the rest of it. And what that means is that you can test the water, you can see if even the data you're getting back is correct to you, and then you can test basically whether that works on one data set, many data sets, because there'll probably be a point in your marketplace where you get quite heavily into diminishing returns as well. So if we go, okay, so you're managing by hand and you're just putting down competitor data and having a look and doing that by hand, and then passing on cost prices by hand. Great, you do that on your key 100 SKUs, let's say, for sake of argument. And you think, okay, that works quite well. So then I can step up and automate that across my entire inventory, and you'll see the benefit of that. And then you can put some sales-driven stuff in. And that, for me, that's the first tipping point in terms of where you can get off the price automation train. Because it might be that you're in an FMCG space, completely driven by competitor price. The sales stuff has a benefit, but not to generate the kind of difference in spend for you. So happy days, this is the one for me. You might find that actually you don't have much competitor data, and then the sales stuff is incredibly important for you because you're suddenly being able to respond to the market in the way that you couldn't. And then there are other data sets that you can layer in, obviously, and other things you can do with it. And you can do price testing and price elasticity and whatever. But it's not a bad thing to kind of get on and get off at various points when you're not ready for it. In fact, you're probably going to do more damage by staying too far along when you don't need to, in an odd sense, I think.
And so in BlackCurve, how it might be worth sort of saying, how do we automate? Yeah. And giving kind of peeling back the curtain a bit into our particular product and how users can actually automate their pricing.
Yeah, sure. So I won't get too product here. I'll just talk a bit high level about the data ingestion and egestion stuff and how it works. So what we try and do for the data ingestion, data load, is to hook in such a way that you never have to touch it again. So we hook into wherever either your IRP or your e-com store, or I always get the acronyms wrong, so bear with me. But say you're on BigCommerce, we hook up to BigCommerce. Say you're on Shopify, we hook up to Shopify Magento. But we also do file transfer, Dropbox, all that kind of stuff. And we work with you to configure that process so some way a file gets or data gets delivered from one store that you're maintaining in your business into us, and then hopefully, it never happens, you never have to look at it again. So that tends to be your business data. So that is product data, so inventory, SKU, cost price, RRP, map pricing if you do it, sales, proprietary data, all that kind of stuff. Those kind of stuff we handle that way. And then product identifiers. So those product identifiers are then used to scrape automatically. So once you've loaded that in, that's actually all you need to do with us from a data load perspective. We take the fields we need out of that. We go off, we scrape the internet, we pull that competitor data in automatically. We can hook in with your Google Merchant Center to put in advertising data if you want to do that kind of thing. And so we've built this kind of integration structure where, and it can take a little while to get up and running, especially with more customizable platforms. So like Shopify, BigCommerce are pretty straightforward because their API is pretty defined and what you can get out of them. Whereas you go to the Magento side, which is very customizable. You've often worked with an agency to build that up for you. Your data structure won't look like another Magento customer's data structure necessarily, whereas in BigCommerce or Shopify it will, and that's just kind of the nature of the system. But yeah, once that's built, in theory, you get, depending on the frequency we do it, daily data in BlackCurve for the rest of your life. So we will just ping your system every day, say, can we have that lovely data? Thank you very much. We'll go off and run our batch jobs to populate the rest of the data fields, and happy days. And then the e-gestion is completely the same because we have that pipeline. We just push the price back or anything else that we're managing for you. So tagging or product identity or kind of highlighting stuff that you want back in your system. But it's really that simple when it's running. And then the joy of that is that then you can manipulate this data in platform, interrogate it, analyze it, and run pricing rules on it. And then that's kind of where you work, and you know that you've got this nice loop of what we said earlier. You don't have to manage the Excel spreadsheet, which is what was doing that originally, copy paste, drag around. The data's coming in, you can do your manipulation, you can see the output, and the output's going back out pretty much automatically.
And I think, I mean, from a physical price set, well, not physical, but from a price setting point of view, it might be worth adding that there's a workflow tool that you can use, very much drag and drop. So no matter how, you can either use our out of the box, tried and tested. We know that these quote unquote rules work really well in certain sectors. So just take that and off it will run. Alternatively, no matter how wacky or crazy your mind is in terms of I really want to go and test this particular rule, you can build that rule really simply with the workflow tool.
Yeah, the way I'd phrase that is you probably know your business a lot better than we do. because we often find that our base level rules like work kind of well on average, but you want to treat certain brands or categories differently, or because we make assumptions like everything should sell the same, and obviously everything probabilistically should have the same chance of selling, and then that may have a knock-on impact because it may be a seasonal good or it may be something else, and you may want to tweak that, and we don't know that a priori. It's also worth saying that the pushing doesn't have to be automatically. We have validation steps, so you can go into the system and check the prices yourself and do it. Or you can turn the pushing off and just actually pull the file down as a CSV and do it that way if you want to. So you can get the benefit of the pricing automation without taking the risk of hooking up to your system. And we find that people tend to, as in if you go on a trial with us, what we tend to do is go through that process of generating the prices for you, checking they look sensible, and we'll go into this in a minute, it sounds like, but error checking the ones that aren't, understanding why they're not, making sure the system is up and running, and then we'll go to something what we call semi-auto, which is the kind of confirmation in the system, and then we aim to get you up and running automatically as quickly as possible. But you've kind of got two ways of doing it. You can go into the system yourself and run it, or you can just leave it and we'll run it for you on the daily, and then you don't even have to worry about it. Apart from,
but I mean, the automation there has been handled for, in terms of all the maths have been crunched, all the numbers have been presented to you in a nice format for you to review and go, yep. Even if you do want to go for that sort of semi kind of manual approach, and it's probably worth saying that definitely in the early days, once you're building confidence, we do encourage that sort of semi manual, and then flick it to fully auto, and then just use the dashboard to say, is it working? We'll come back to how do you know if it's working in a moment, but it might be worth sort of just touching upon some examples of automated rules for a moment. So, you know, at a basic sense, it could be, right, I want to match a certain competitor, or I want to always ensure that I am the middle price in the market, or my price is always priced against the market price. But then you can layer on top of that by adding things like, but I do not ever want to sell below a certain margin. And you might want to take that even further, because, and this is where our using competitor data wisely, but then also using it in conjunction with other data comes in. You might want to overlay your sales history and say, well, I'm happy to follow the market price, but if my sales are still performing well above the market price, you know, I don't need to follow the market price. There's almost like lots of if and and statements in there, for want of a better word.
And you've touched on what I think the most important rules are from my experience of working with people, and they're what we call the kind of the guardrails or the constraints. Yeah. So really, when you say you want dynamic pricing, you want it within a range. It is the reality of it, right? And it's very hard, no matter how you're doing the optimization, whether it's like a rule based, whether it's an optimizer, whether it's neural net models, whatever. The computer won't know if it doesn't have data outside of it, and may push you there. So you need to stop it, right? And so we have rules that are just like, don't go above this price, don't go below this price. Freeze rule, like for these products, even if they somehow get in the system, they're not allowed to move, right? Super important if you have map pricing or like suppliers who set the price for you, and you're just passing that on, because you want to be able to do the whole system, right? This is the one of the important things about automation. Automation is no good if you're doing 60%, right? It's not 100% true, but really it's not, because you're still having to do the faff. It's still annoying you. The system then annoys you and becomes more work, because you have to work out, is this a product I'm going to put in the system? Is this not a product I'm going to put in the system? And all the rest of it. So I think what people often view as the most boring pricing rules, I think are the most important, and that's certainly changed in my view from 2.5 years ago as a fresh-faced data scientist in the pricing industry, because you think, I'm going to do kind of crazy stuff and cool stuff, and we're going to do optimization and price elasticity. And really, when you're talking to business people, it's like, can you guarantee that my margin will not drop below this number? Great. And I want to be competitive and in this range. Great. And anything on top of that is a bonus, but about my priority is basically that order.
But I mean, you've mentioned some of the cons there, and that's of automation, and they don't become cons, they become positives. That if you invest the time in data health and you invest the time in setting those safeguards, automation can't cause that much harm. So a lot of the time when price automation causes harm is when, for example, you've set up a rule which says, I'm going to blindly follow what the market's doing, right? Okay, I always want to follow the market price, and you haven't put those safeguards in. Okay, now to throw some price theory in there to the mix, you know, you have the problem of a race to the bottom, right, which doesn't benefit anybody, and actually you could then also end up selling below minimum margin, right? Alternatively, they're some of the cons. If you invest the time in the setup, you invest the time in the safeguarding, you invest the time in making sure that your data's of good enough quality, then actually those cons kind of go away. Also, I might be worth saying that this comes back to the cultural fit, that you've got to be prepared to break eggs to make an omelette, right? And you've got to be prepared to make mistakes. And you might actually find that automation just does not work for your business. It doesn't. You don't need to be dynamically, and you've learnt that by going into it. But that might be perceived as a con, but actually also it could also be a benefit. So I'm just conscious of time, Rob. So I'm gonna move on, unless you've got anything you wanted to particularly add. So from some of the pros that we've spoken about. I mean, you touched upon it a few moments ago around safeguards, and actually we're a firm believer of price testing and nudging and doing small incremental changes to price, and that's what automation allows you to do on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. Ingest all the data, I look at the rules, and then make that nudge. And one of your automated rules could be, I only ever want to change price by X percent or Y percent. And the reason why that is also uber important is because a lot of our I don't know, you probably tell me to shut up, Philip, don't give this away, but actually price stability price stability is one of the components that Google uses to determine how well you appear. I mean, if you're constantly fluctuating massively price, it's not a huge degree, but it is actually one of the components.
Yeah, I actually think there's an even more fundamental reason for that rule, and we touched on it earlier, but I don't think we've fully gone into it. Is that we've done a whole podcast on it though. Is, well, competitor data can be utter garbage, and it's really, really hard to kind of like algorithmically spot it in some cases. Like, you put a GTIN and you get the numbers back for that GTIN, it comes back. You're trying to take the human out. A human may spot it immediately, but you're going to make a machine is going to make mistakes, and a human will make mistakes as well, to be fair. And so that is part of the reason for limiting price change movement, because then you're not taking a £500 product and taking it down to £5 because the data point that's gone through your system is wrong. And often there is I think we've spoken about this before, but there is a data culture piece. And when you say that your business may not be ready for it, it may be that the rest of your business's data culture is not clean enough for automated pricing to work, right? So your cost price data coming through is garbage. You can never guarantee the correct minimum price from the margin you want to make. So automation is always going to trip over it, and it won't work. And if you can't solve that core root problem, you can't automate. It's really that simple. And I would advise you not to, because it just, for people like us, and especially for product guys like me, it's an absolute nightmare, because we just get stuck in a loop with customer success being like, we can't fix it. Like what do you want us to do? We can take some value of RRP and hack something in and go that way, but like, it's not a clean solution, which is not really what we're trying to do. And that for me actually is probably it's not a con, but it's where pricing automation is unlikely to work is if your data is not good enough, I think, or clean enough, or representative enough, or however you want to define it, it's not right, I think. Because a machine won't know.
Absolutely. So, so in terms of just to come, as we come to the top of the hour, and we look at the final points of why price automation should be your New Year's resolution. We've covered time saving. There's a direct link between automation and becoming market efficient, and as you become market efficient and you price test and you nudge and you tweak, wouldn't you love to be able to identify through automation that if you increase the price of a product and volume stays the same, happy days? Wouldn't you love to identify whereby if I test a lower price, does that open up the taps exponentially and enable me to massively, the loss in margin is massively outweighed by that opening of the taps? And if you've got thousands and thousands of products, you can't do that at scale, and automation allows you to do that. There are some other things that that also you get for not for free, but you get as a byproduct of price automation. It's things like, you know, your conversion rate comes up. It's things like, you know, a lot of people are making decisions with their virtual clicks or their virtual feet that certain products you have to be on the money, and if you haven't automated that process, your click through rates and your conversions is going to go down.
Yeah, if you're too expensive, it doesn't matter whether you're a shop or online, people ain't going to buy from you. It's the root of it. It's price doesn't just how am I trying to phrase this? Price affects demand in like a multitude of ways. It's not just kind of making the demand appear or disappear. It's just whether you actually harvest the demand. That's the way I think about it.
Cool. So was there anything else, Rob, that you wanted to add for today's podcast? Or I think we've covered a hell of a lot of ground, but is there anything you'd like to leave our wonderful listeners with?
No. No, I think it's all good. I think we've covered a lot of it. I think it's I do think that the automation piece is often, like, the real benefit of it is often forgotten by people selling pricing technology. Because you're going out with the benefits of pricing and why pricing is important, and you forget that, like, actually one of the major benefits that businesses you're working with is that, like, some person is not having to spend a day a week doing a thankless task or doing a task where they can't keep up. Like, one of our clients said to us that the reason he likes what we do so much is that he used to set his prices on a Thursday and come in on a Friday morning and see that people had changed their prices and they'd seen what he was doing and affected it, and then he felt like that whole Thursday's work was a waste of time, which is a horrible cycle to get into, in that you're doing something because you have to do it, but you can't do it fast enough, so you feel like everything you're doing is futile. And then so if you automate that process, suddenly they change on the Friday, you change it again, and if they're doing it manually, you beat them. Like,
Absolutely. I mean, I think sometimes it's easy to suddenly get into the trap of, oh, it's a magic money tree. If I get pricing right, it's a magic money tree. And absolutely it can be, but one of the initial goals of pricing is, you know, the money trees are kind of a byproduct. One of the initial goals can be time saving and equivalent. So add price automation to your New Year's resolution, and if it's not, add it now. And if it's not,
they all had it on their list for Santa.
They did. It was under their Christmas tree. It was absolutely under their Christmas tree. So, so thank you very much, Rob. I think we've kicked off the year with a bang. Lots of energy. Let's keep it up. So, we've been BlackCurve. This is our podcast, E-commerce Matters, available on all major podcasting platforms. Look forward to welcoming you next time. Take care.